Hey,
Hi, how are you doing?
that's the first interesting question. Honestly, last week I was going through a lot of difficult moments, but I've learned a lot about that. Probably I can tell you about that, but I can say that I'm doing fine, but it's not the kind of fine that you always get this kind of answer. It's the kind of fine that I fought a lot during these weeks to be fine. So I'm glad to say I'm fine. Yeah.
Will you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah. Well, I'm Mexican. I come from Mexico City. I have 3 brothers. All of them are really special in a very different way. Particularly my sister. Her name is Karina. We call her Kiki. I will tell you a lot about Kiki in this interview. I can say I'm proud that I was raised just by my mother. This is one of the best things that could happen to me in life. I studied electronics and engineering systems. So I worked for almost 10 years. Half time was during my bachelor. I worked and studied. In the university I did a lot of CCTV, which is like the camera surveillance, physical security. And then I started to work in Teléfonos de México, which is the major telecommunications company in my country. And I can say that I reached the goal that I had at that moment. That was to be powerful and to have money and all of that. And when that happened, I soon discovered that that wasn't what I was looking for. I will also tell you a lot about that. I play the uke. I really like music. I really love international music, African music, Polish music, any kind of music. I once attended a concert from a singer, a fado singer. She's Portuguese, Katia Guerreiro, and she said something that it really touched me. She said, fado is in Portuguese, and she said, I've been playing fado in Japan, in Mexico, in a lot of parts in Europe, South America, and in Africa also. And she says, even though in most of these countries they don't speak Portuguese, they feel fado. They understand fado because music is universal. Music is not the kind of thing that is just about words. Words are really important, but also what you transmit and the way you transmit it makes all the difference. So I like to find this kind of music that really touches me, that really transmits something. This kind of music that I just cannot forget. I'm always chasing music. I like to read a lot. I can say that reading is a transformative experience. If it wasn't because of some particular books, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't jump the ocean to be here. I probably would be making more money and looking to be more powerful, but books changed my life.
Where is here?
Here in Manchester University. By the way, I dreamed a lot of Manchester, which is also interesting because some years ago I studied Italian and Portuguese, and I dreamed of living in these countries because I find them really, I like their culture. I find them romantic, but not the romantic way of love and all of that, but romantic in the sense of the feeling of the place, the kind of festivals they have, their nights, their days. I think they are very special. And to be honest, the UK was the least. It was like, no, the UK wasn't really interesting to me. And I tried as much as I could to study in other part of Europe, But one day, a friend of mine, he's Swedish, he came to Mexico City. That day I was very tired, and I didn't, it was the day in which you are in bed at 8 p.m., lights off, and he was telling me, come to have dinner with me. And I didn't want, I was feeling sick that day, but something told me, you have to go, you have to go, you have to go. So I just went, and that day he told me about ICT 4D, which is what I'm studying now in my master. ICT is for development. It's information and communication technologies for development, which is basically how to use properly technology in order to reduce injustice, poverty, to try to reduce social gaps. So from that moment on, I started to look where to study ICT 4D. And somehow, the only valid options, because of the course, because of the modules, were either Stockholm or Manchester. But then I found that in Manchester they had Richard Hicks, who is the one who actually created the ICT 4D concept. So from that moment on, I dreamt of Manchester for almost 3 years. I've been thinking of Manchester. Manchester was in all my talks with my friends, and suddenly I discovered that I fall in love with Manchester, and consequently with the UK. So just being here in this country, I really feel privileged. I never thought I would love so much this country that I did as much as possible before that moment to try to avoid it and to try to go to any other country. However, this country has given me so much, so many friends, so many experiences, so many challenges that I'm really grateful, and I found that the UK is even more special than I could ever imagine. So the UK is very, very interesting in that sense. What else can I tell you? I don't know.
Maybe why did you pick this spot?
Okay. Whenever my mother told me that whenever I felt in pain, whenever I felt disconnected, whenever I felt that I had to talk to God or just to think about her taking care of me, she always told me to look for a tree, to sit beneath the tree, and to go barefoot and to feel the sun in my feet, and to connect with the grass and with the earth. That way, she told me, I could feel God and I could feel her. And I do believe that it's not just this spot is very special to me because it's the place where I have found this kind of magic. But I also found that with this kind of definition, wherever I go, it is my home, because I will always be able to find this kind of spot. And I will always have this magical spot wherever I go. So that's why I love this. This is not just that this spot is the philosophy of this spot.
What does happiness mean to you? You said that the definition changed throughout your life.
Well, for that I can tell you a bit of my life. I wasn't poor, but we went through a lot of difficulties to afford things, to afford my education, to afford lots of things. Particularly during my undergraduate, we didn't have money to pay for it. Sometimes education in Mexico is a bit exclusive, I think. So private universities are very, very expensive. But my mother, she always dreamt that I could attend this kind of university. I can say that I wasn't really agree with that idea, because I didn't want to go through all the pain that would be that would imply to pay all that money, because we didn't have it. So I just told her, how are we going to be able to pay this if we don't have the money? Sometimes we don't even have to eat, so how are we going to pay for this? And she told me, I will find a way. I don't know how at this very moment, but I will find a way. So I started studying there. I was the only one in my vehicle who didn't have a personal computer, a laptop, in this university, which was kind of strange for a computing systems engineering that school not to have his computer. But I'm grateful, because I did lots of crazy things to be able to study and to study that major. Because sometimes in the electronics lab, I had to program circuits, for example, and all of my fellows or all of my mates just had to connect the circuit to the laptop, and that was all. Send the program, and that was. But I had to go out of the lab, run 2-3 buildings, ask to get access to a lab, and program it with the computer that was there, and then come running again and show it to my professor. And if it wasn't right, I had to go back and run again. Sometimes at night, because I didn't have computer at home, I stayed in the uni till 11, till they kicked me out. And then I had to go to my grandmother's place. But sometimes they didn't also have money, and sometimes they didn't have food to offer to me. So I studied 8 hours during night, even without food. And somehow I learned with this kind of very difficult experiences that these kind of challenges are the things we should all be looking for, because I did what I thought I wouldn't be able to do just to finish my bachelor. Also, for example, in terms of money, I always had to look for the ways to convince the school that I could pay, or most of all that I could pay. So I used to go to school and tell them or convince them on my plans to pay. I had to study with certain limitations, but also I learned to talk to people. I learned to touch hearts. I learned to convince them, but most important, I learned to convince myself that I could do it. And somehow I ended up convincing them, also because my bachelor was finishing. They would not, it was the last time that the school was offering it. This means that because it was disappearing, I could not go behind schedule, but I went behind schedule, because sometimes I could just afford for 2 modules out of 6, or just 1 module out of 6, which meant that I also had to convince them to let me have first those modules that were unique to my major. So I was taking in 3rd semester modules from 9th semester, from 8th semester, and then when I went to the 8th or the 9th semester, I started taking modules from the second semester. It was totally crazy. But when I think about it, the academic challenge, it was challenging, indeed. But the challenge was more on life. And I'm really, really grateful to have all these kind of difficult moments, because I am who I am, and I think the way I do because of these moments. However, at that time, my only dream was to have a lot of money, because I didn't want to live like that anymore. So when I finished with the bachelor, I started working at this company, the telecommunications company. And surprisingly, during 6 years I got promoted 3 times. But I never asked for a promotion. I never looked for a promotion. They just gave it to me. And suddenly, in the 4th year, I found myself being a manager. And in the 5th, I found myself with the offer to be almost the assistant of the director, which was really interesting, because I started sitting in the same table as one of the most powerful and richest man in my country. And suddenly I found that I was taking decisions that could affect the whole internet infrastructure in my country. And I found that I had much more money than I could imagine, that I could get the company car, lots of benefits. The vendors from different parts of the world wanted to invite me to their countries to go to this kind of very expensive hotels, to take courses, to take lots of things. And I found that I got the power and the money that I wanted at that moment, that I was dreaming of. And then I found also that my heart was empty. The days started to be very long, and the job started to be very boring. Even though it was challenging, it was boring because there was something wrong. I can say that I achieved what I wanted, but somehow it was empty. Then I thought, I started to look for something that was fulfilling, that was meaningful. Then the conversation with my Swedish friend happened, and then I understood that being important in life, achieving things in life, the real meaning of success is not just to have or to play an important role, or to have money, or to be important in terms of what society tells us. Success has to do with help someone, to change a life, to transmit this kind of messages. I really feel more successful now that I don't have a car and I just cycle to the uni, that I just have my student room. But I feel more successful talking to you. I feel much more successful because you asked me for this interview. This is the kind of success I want to have. This is the kind of success that I want to transmit to people. And yes, this is the kind of success that I was looking for. And now my heart starts to feel much more fulfilled. I also learned to follow my heart, and not to follow what society says, and not to follow the ideas that others have of what I should do. A lot of people ask me, why should I live such a good role now that I had that economic and job security, that I was living. It took me 8 minutes to get to the office, 8 minutes walking. I had my 2-floor house just for me. The place where I lived, I loved it. There was a lot of culture, theaters, everything was there, and I think my career was, I think that I had a lot of security for all my life. But then I also found that uncertainty, I started to find joy in uncertainty. So the answer to the question is, I decided to change my life and to pursue a very different career because my heart was telling to do so. And it's this kind of feeling that sometimes it's very easy to ignore. It's this kind of feeling that comes when your heart starts to beat and it tells you, do it, do it, do it. Is this the kind of feeling that if you ignore it, you get the what if feeling? What if I did it? What if? And it's the kind of feeling that, that you have it for a long period if you don't follow your heart. And I started to understand that whenever I follow my heart, even if it sounds crazy, it ends taking me to places that I never expected, such as the UK. And then I find that it's the right place to be, just because I followed my heart. Following my heart is also a very good lesson that life has taught me. The first time that I was conscious about this idea of following my heart was when I was 15 years old. My mother was pregnant after 15 years, 12 years after my sister. My youngest brother, he's 15 years younger than me, which means that, well, my mother was 38 years at that moment. And because of certain conditions, to be pregnant and to have this child was very dangerous to her. She had only 20% of possibilities to survive. And I remember that those days were very difficult because obviously when you're told that your mother has only 20% of possibilities to survive, you don't want to run this kind of risk. And I even asked her not to have him. And you know what she told me? She told me that her decision was taken totally out of love. She already loved that much that baby that she wasn't even thinking about the risk. She wanted to do it because it was the right thing. Because she was following her heart. And I could not really understand that at that moment, because I thought that was the worst thing that could happen to me at that moment, because I might lose my mother. Then the time come. He was supposed to be born on March. But he came a bit before we were expecting, one day before my birthday. 5 hours before my birthday, 5 hours after my birthday. And I can say now that he is the biggest gift, the biggest present that my mother gave me, that life gave me. Because I also had a very difficult childhood. And at some moment I think that I lost my childhood. I lost, like at 7 years old, the joy of being a kid. And then he came and he gave me a second opportunity to be a child, to be a kid, through games, through the TV shows that we watched together, through the kind of just sleeping with him, hugging him, looking at how he was happy, taking him to kindergarten. Yeah, I don't know why, but life, God, whatever you want to call it, gave me a second opportunity to live a happy childhood. And that decision was because my mother decided to follow her heart. She was fine, she made it. She's still showing me a lot about life. And but yes, I think that one of the most important lessons in life is not to be afraid. Follow your heart, whatever it takes. Don't think about just the limitations and the risks. Don't stop just because of fear. They say that fear is the only thing that could be really considered as a handicap, because it's the only one that prevents you from doing things, from doing what you want to do, from not following your heart. I have seen people playing the guitar without hands. I have seen people who weren't supposed to even walk. They couldn't even blink. They had no control of their body. And they ended up doing pretty amazing things. And one of these persons is my sister, is Kiki. Kiki was born with intellectual disabilities. She cannot read, she cannot write, but she was also born with without any kind of control of her muscles, of her body. The doctors said that she could not even sit in her life. She was supposed to just be laying in the bed, looking at the ceiling for all her life. But once again, my mother didn't accept it, even though more than 20 doctors said so, even though my father accepted it and thought she was crazy to go against what the doctor said. And after 3 years, she found the solution. Because of that, the life of my sister changed. She skates, she walks, first of all, she runs, she skates, she swims, she rides horses, she cycles. She even ran the National Olympic Games for her category and was the second fastest in 200 meters and the third in 100 meters. She who was supposed not to walk, she who couldn't even blink her eyes, and we have to close her eyes and we have to hydrate her eyes. She, whenever I get home, whenever I visit my mother, she comes running and she hugs me so strongly that I have to ask her, please, please, not so strong. She has this kind of strength. And when I was younger, I couldn't understand why she has this kind of conditions. Because if I think about statistics, in Mexico is less than 0.5% of population that has this kind of conditions. And I felt so unfortunate at some moment of life, and I would do whatever I could to prevent that if I could. But then I understood that she's happy and that she's always looking. She doesn't consider herself as handicapped or disabled, or even though she cannot read, she's always carrying a book. And she's looking at the pages and passing the pages, highlighting the pages, even though she cannot read. I learned from her that we should always go after our dreams and do what we would like to do, and even if it seems impossible, just go for it. And somehow also she was part of this idea of using technology to do something meaningful. I thought of a project called La Casita de Kiki in Spanish, which means Kiki's little house. It has several ideas behind it, but one of it is what could happen if Kiki can read even if she can't. And technology might be a solution for that. Now technology, you can see it with Google Translator, OCR technologies, they can read for you. Imagine, have you watched Amelie? Do you remember that scene when she finds a blind man and she starts to describe him the world, and then an explosion of colors and moments come to him? It's like a revelation. And I think, what if I can show her what it says there, and over there, and over there? It would be a way for her to discover the world. That's a good way to use technology. That's how technology should be used. And that's part of La Casita de Kiki. But also, I think about community. Community should be part of La Casita de Kiki. La Casita de Kiki should be a place where people come together, and just because their heart is demanding them to do it, why don't we create podcasts telling beautiful stories for Kiki and for those that dream and have the privilege to be as strong as her, and that have the privilege to have the kind of challenges she has? Why don't we tell them this kind of stories, so that we can warm up their hearts and we can make them dream. So La Casita de Kiki also has the intention of being a hub of podcasts for them, but also has the sense of community, in terms that I don't understand why my mother had to go through all these difficulties to find the right answer for Kiki. I have also found stories of people who didn't find the answer, and that their lives were not as fortunate as Kiki's. La Casita de Kiki should be a place where these kind of experiences are shared, so that no one ever has to suffer because of lack of information. Imagine a place in which, or a blog or a social network, in which you can come whenever you find that there's something with your kid or with some relative or with a friend, and you want to help, and you find the experiences that have worked, and you find the doctors that have made all the difference. This kind of thing should exist. I'm really surprised it doesn't. So once again, technology, internet is there to communicate, to bind us. Let's use this opportunity to create this kind of things for the kids. That's why I love ICT4D. ICT4D has this kind of feeling, this kind of idea of justice, and just to use technology in the right way, because technology, I'm really grateful for that. It's commercially driven, but at the same time we have the responsibility to find the way to use it. I once read a book is called The Startup Nation by Uri Goldberg. He describes how Israel turned to be a startup nation. I know that Israel is going through several things right now, but this book is really interesting because there's one point in which he says there are three things that define the future of a nation. It's demographics, what people can do, how they are distributed, all that has to do with people. The other is resources, available resources. What you have to grow, for example, for agriculture, if you have oil, if you have gas, what you can do with the natural resources that your country has. Do you have a forest, a river? But then he said, these two things, if you think about the future, might look a bit negative because there's going to be a lot of people and less resources. And then he talked about the third thing to consider, and he said it is technology. Think about technology. In the 60s, when the first big computer was introduced, it changed the world. Then when it got home, in the 70s, 80s, it once again changed totally the world. Then the internet in the 90s, the 80s and the 90s. And now we have a computer in our pockets. Now we know how much time will it get. It will take to get to a place we have never been before. I found this guy, Richard Hicks, through technology. It changed paradigms, it changes all. And it is our responsibility to use it wisely. This is ICT 4D to me. Uri Goldberg said, it is our responsibility to make sure that technology is used for justice and is used to change people's life. And I like to think of technology as a tool. I have heard a lot this question this year, if technology is good or not. If technology is being, most of all, if technology is good or not. I think that technology cannot be good, technology cannot be bad. Technology is just a tool. Think about it as a hammer. A hammer is a tool. It could be used to build, but it can also be built to hit someone's head. It depends on the user, how he's going to use it. If he's going to create a building, or if he's going to kill someone. The hammer can do both. This is the same for technology. So I think that I have also to transmit this kind of message. It's like as music, we have to transmit this kind of message and touch hearts and let people know that they can follow their hearts, and that there's a way in which you can follow your heart that can be good for people and can be good for society. And then we can find this Ubuntu feeling. You know Ubuntu? Okay, Ubuntu in some African communities is a word for community, which means that whomever needs help in the community, if he's suffering, the community suffers. So all the community helps him, and then he will return to the community. I really like this idea, because we should always think about we, not me. And the same happens with a language in Mexico, the Mayan language. Mayans think that they don't have a word for me, for I. They just have a word for us, for we, which means that it's not possible for them to think about me and to think about I, about mine. They think about ours. we should always think about us. If you think about, once again, technology and community, this is what we always should think. And not only that, in life, in whatever we do, think about us, think about life. In that sense, it's not about me, because if you suffer, I will suffer. Sometimes people don't understand that, but it's happening in my country. 44% of my country is in poverty. Imagine the dimensions of this when the population of this country is 131 million. To say that 44% of the population is poor. We're going through a lot of insecurity, lots of issues. Mexico is great. I love my country. I will also tell you about it. But people cannot be safe if they don't think about those who are suffering, those who are not getting the same opportunities. So I also came here because of that. Because I think that it's fair to learn about it and use my lifetime, my whatever I learn for that. And I'm happy that life has taken me in this direction with every single thing, to get to know with every single book, with every single song, with every single person. All of them have led me here. And now I want to give back to life, to give back to Mexico. And my way to give back is showing them the power of technology for us, and showing them the power of the idea of us and not me. Because if we think of us, we might even get more productive, more... Mexico has a lot of resources. Mexico, I never understood Mexico as good as I understand it now. I had to go out of my country to have a better understanding of it. I understood several things, and I always was concerned of the situations there. But when I came here and started, I cannot say comparing, but the things that I saw here also made me aware of things in Mexico that have to change, but also that are good. And I wasn't considering them to be that good. I will talk first about the good things. You know, the thing that I miss the most of my country? What I miss the most is one cheese. It's called Oaxaca cheese, queso Oaxaca. This cheese is the kind of cheese that you can go to the next mini store and get it for half a pound. I enjoy it that much, but I never thought how special it was till I'm here, and after 9 months of not having queso Oaxaca, I understood how good it is. I understood how special my country is because it has these kind of things, and I wasn't aware of how lucky I am to have them. To just have to walk 10 minutes to get them, and that they are really, really cheap. This queso Oaxaca taught me several things. The same as beans. In Mexico, we're famous because of beans. We eat beans. It's part of our diet, and it is also part of our culture. Beans is also something that you can get in the store. They are very cheap as well. 20 25 pieces and you get it. A kilo bean. And they are these very big beans. They are amazing. I haven't found them here. And I didn't realize about how lucky I was just to have beans till it was my birthday last February, and a friend of mine, she's from Costa Rica, she gave me the beans. She gave me half-kilo beans from her country. She almost made me cry because I realized how important beans are. Such an insignificant thing, I would thought a year ago. Beans. But now, when she gave me half a kilo beans, it was like, I have beans, I have half a kilo beans. But also, I really appreciated that gift, because she gave up, she quit to have half a kilo beans. And then I understood that to give half a kilo beans could be an enormous act, a huge act of love. To give half kilo beans. I could never think of that, half kilo beans. This is what the UK gave me. A friend who gave me half kilo beans. And when I look back to my country, you know, the UK also gave me this feeling of the sun. I should move here, because now I have sun. I can have this feeling of the sun heating up, warming up my feet. I used to have that in Mexico, all time, all day, sometimes even in winter, during winter. And then here I had to wait half a year to start feeling this once again in my feet. When I had it for granted in my country, almost all days. And here I have to wait half a year. Once again, the UK taught me how special it is, and that I didn't think about it, and I wasn't grateful for that. I cannot wait till the day that I go back to my country, and I can feel this every single day. I brought some sandals. I was expecting to use them, I don't know, probably when I had sunny days, but then I knew that the UK was cold, but I wasn't expecting to have to wait a lot to use my sandals. And it's just that what the UK taught me is that we are always very, very lucky. Very, very lucky. It's just that we don't see how lucky we are. We're always looking at those things that we don't have, and we don't look at those that we already have. We just want more and more, and we don't understand that we have this sun that hits my feet. You know how many times did it take for the sunlight to come and hit my feet? Do you know how many times? It took 8,000 years and 8 seconds for this light to come and hit my feet. Because the sun is always like in chaos, and this the light particles are always like collisioning, and for them to get to the surface of the sun it takes 8,000 years, and once they get to the surface it takes 8 seconds to get here and touch my feet. Can you imagine that? This sunlight that we're receiving was created 1,000 years and 8 seconds ago. It's, if you think about it, if you feel the wind in your face, how lucky I am. How lucky I am when the rain catches me and I get wet. I used to run from the rain, and I was a bit scared that I had to ride my cycle in such a city as Manchester, in which it rains a lot. And then I started to enjoy cycling while getting wet, for two reasons. First of all, because I will miss it when I go back to my country, and second, because it was an opportunity to grow. I will tell you more about it, but yeah, the sun, the rain, the wind, the trees that give me a home wherever I am, that give me this sense of belonging, they are there. The grass is there. You're there. You were born in very different countries and you're here. And I didn't have to ask for that. The only thing that I had to do is to live. And then I was given the sky. I was given the capacity to dream. I was given the colors. I was given every single thing. And I just, when I think on the times that what I was looking is money, that I was looking about power, and now I just want a moment to sit and feel my feet being warmed by the sunlight. Life is amazing. Think about these books that you have read. You didn't have to ask for them. They were already there. Someone had these ideas that changed your life. Or at least that made me have these nights without sleeping because I wanted to read more. I didn't have to ask for that. For that film that I liked a lot and I watched 100 times, I didn't have to ask for those languages that I love so much. For the Italian language, for the Portuguese language, for English language, and for Spanish. One more thing that the UK taught me, Spanish. How great it is, how lucky I am to be Spanish, a native Spanish speaker. How many people is willing to learn Spanish? I never thought of that before coming here. I didn't have to ask for the opportunity to be able to teach Spanish. I just got it and I thought that's great. And through this experience of being able to teach Spanish to people, I fell in love with my language. And I started to feel so proud of my country, of my culture, that I wanted to show it to whomever wanted or was open to listen to that. I never thought of Spanish. I knew it was really rich, that it was really, such an important language. But I didn't realize how lucky I was to be a Spanish speaker. And you gave me the opportunity to realize about that. Yeah.
You mentioned some books and some movies. Would you like to give us some names?
Yeah.
Maybe someone would be interested in reading or watching. Would you recommend?
one of the books that I think changed my life. A lot of people tell me that I'm very left-wing thinker, but I think that left-wing, I don't want to think about left-wing as a trend or a silo, or I don't want to do politics. However, some of the writers that touch my heart are left-wing, but I don't want to think of them as doing politics. I want to think about them because they talked about justice, because they talked about the things that should be different. And one of these writers was Eduardo Galeano. He's Uruguayan, and he showed me the power of words, because Uruguay run or had a dictatorship during the 60s, 70s, and the way he rebelled against this dictatorship was through the power of words, through the power of writing and reading. And he got so much power that a dictatorship was afraid of him, and he was expelled of his country, and they wanted to kill him, and he went to live to Spain for 12 years. Then he came back. He went back to Uruguay, and he spent his whole life being congruent. And even after Uruguay didn't have dictatorship, or it stopped to have this dictatorship, he kept doing this work for the whole Latin America. He did it for Mexico, for Chile, for the whole Latin America. He has a book that I really like. It was his last book before dying. It's called El Cazador de Historias, which should be something in English as The Story Hunter. I don't know if he knew it was going to be his last book, but it's autobiographic some way. It explains you how, when he met some mine workers in Bolivia, he understood the responsibility of using words to transmit, because these guys, the miners, would never be able to see the sea, to see the ocean. Their life was there just in the mine, and they will die young, and they didn't have the money to afford a trip to the coast and see the ocean, to see the sea. And they asked him, "Can you please tell me how the sea looks like? How does it feel?" At that moment, Eduardo Galeano understood the responsibility of words, because at that night, in front of the fire, he had the responsibility to get them wet, to let them smell how the sea smells, how the beach smells. He had to transmit how do you feel the sun in your skin, how you feel the sand in your feet. At that moment, he understood what is to undertake this kind of task. The beauty of words, but also the responsibility of words and the responsibility of talking and speaking. This book has short stories. This is one of them. He also talks about the privilege of looking at the sunrise, at the sunset. He talks about injustice, because he is Eduardo Galeano. And he turns life into magic. He talks about the indigenous, that they are not Yeah, they are not ashamed of being naked, of being nude. If they wear something, it's not because they are ashamed of nudity. They wear it because they distinguish themselves, because it's a way to connect with their gods, with them, nature. This is the kind of things he taught me in this book. There's another book called Momo. Have you read it? Momo is from Michael Ende. He's German and he wrote The Never-Ending Story. And he talks about the importance of time. He also changed my life in this sense, because he says, think about time in terms of a treasure. It is the greatest treasure you have, and you're using it. You're spending it with every single second. You will have, he makes the count, like millions and millions and millions of seconds, but you're spending them every single day and every single moment. So he says, the heart beats like 60 to 80 times per minute. Let's make it simple. Let's think that it beats 60 times per minute, which means it's the same as the seconds you have in a minute. This means that you can measure time in heartbeats, and that changes completely the sense of time. Because time, if you think about it in terms of hours, in terms of days, weeks, months, years, you don't realize how quickly it's passing by. You don't realize, because you're always waiting for Friday, and you say, okay, I will do it next week, or you say, I will do it next month, and then Facebook surprises you saying, this happened 4 years ago. And you say, how? I didn't realize this happened 4 years ago. It's, whenever Facebook surprises me with things like that, poof, you don't really realize how fast and how quick time goes by. But if you think about heartbeats, the perception of time is infinite, and it's cyclical. It always comes and goes, and it will always be another September. Even if I'm not here anymore, there will be more and more Septembers, infinite Septembers. But my heartbeats, those are finite. They will finish someday. There will be a day that I only have 100,000, that I will just have 1,000, that I will have 3,600, which is an hour. Someday I will just have 10 heartbeats, and then I will have no heartbeat at all. That changes a lot to me, because I really appreciate it more when I spend time with people, when I spend time with you, when I spend time chatting, reading, studying, because I know that I'm using something that is my treasure, and that I'm spending it. How am I spending it? Am I spending it being lazy? Which is also good sometimes. It depends on what you need in life. But I like to think that I'm spending it in moments like this, in closing my eyes. And can you listen to this music? The music of the trees and the wind and the birds. It's very interesting when you close your eyes and spend your heartbeats listening to these kind of things that we normally miss, because we don't understand how valuable our heartbeats are. Always try to close your eyes, even to try to listen to your own heartbeats. It will be very interesting what you will find. the sounds that you will discover, the birds that you didn't know that were there. This is what Momo taught me. Even if I spend about laziness, even if I spend my time, it's not being lazy. It's being receiving this sunlight in my feet. It's the time for my heart. It's the time for my soul. It's time well spent. This is Momo for me. Another book. Once again, a kid's book that came to me very late in life, and I'm glad it came very late in life because I could appreciate it more. The Little Prince. Because he reinforced my idea of the importance of not of behaving like a kid, but always live like a kid, discovering things, not assuming that things are the way they are. They should never be the way they are. Why should we accept what is wrong? If you think with the logic of a kid, that is what the Little Prince does, you will find that there are a lot of nonsense in our society. This is what he says always. I don't understand why adults are so concerned about non-important things. Why they spend their time the way they do. Really, the Little Prince is very smart. He finds joy in the kind of things that we normally don't appreciate. The kind of things that I told you. The joy of the trees. I remember when I was a kid and I used to play with an airplane that I had, a toy airplane. But this airplane could do whatever I wanted. It did nothing. It didn't have any kind of special lights. It was just a piece of metal. Or it could go to the space. It could even get into the water and turn into a submarine. That airplane could do anything. This is what sometimes we miss in life. The joy of these little things. The joy of just sitting in the grass. Of imagining what the shape of the clouds are telling us. If there's a dragon, there's a bull over there. It has their horns there. Can you see it? That part? It's a bull jumping. So he has his horns there. Yeah, he's jumping over there. We miss a lot of things just because we're always rushing. He has the book starts with him showing a picture of a snake, something that looks like this and then a bit like this, so it's a shape like this, and he asks, what is it? And an adult answers, well, it is a hat, because it's the only thing he can see. And then the Little Prince says, no, it is an elephant. And he says, how in the world could this be an elephant? Yeah, it is an elephant, but you know why? A snake ate him completely. So these parts are the snake and the elephant is inside the snake. It's so beautiful. Why don't we ask? Or why don't we look life that way? Life is so generous. It can surprise you And if you think always positively, you will find, even in the most negative situation, you will always find something to learn, and you will always find the opportunity to grow. Sometimes you will not understand it at that very moment, but the opportunity is always there. You just have to take it, you just have to achieve it. And you're always responsible of how you decide who you are and what you learn of the opportunities. If I think about my life, I had always two choices: to be negative and probably to follow another path on life, or to fall in love with life, even when I had a lot of harsh times. Harsh times. Sometimes my life, I was the kind of kid who was afraid of the weekends, because there was going to be violence in my home, broken windows, things like that. However, instead of getting trauma out of that, instead of hating life, I decided to love life, and I decided to learn about life, and I decided to look at the good thing even on such a situation like that. I learned that I don't want to be like that, and that I love the kind of couple I want to be, the kind of partner I want to be, and the kind of partner I want to have is very different to that. I learned how beautiful life is when I get a sincere hug, when I get a sincere smile. And you know, I'm really grateful even to have this kind of moments, like those, because I wouldn't be who I am, and I like who I am. I'm in this moment in life in which I would not change, not a single second, not a single experience in my life, because all those moments, good and bad, at the end of the day were good, because they helped me to develop my idea of life, and I love it, and I feel proud of it. This thing reminds me of that, so whenever I forget about it, or I feel weak, once again I go barefoot, I touch the grass, and I read it. It says, I'm a free, passionate, loyal man who's totally in love with life. This is what it says, and it's a good reminder.
Can you see it?
Yeah, it's in Spanish, but yeah, here it is. It says, I'm free, passionate, loyal, and in love with life.
Who did you get it from?
I took, it was a great experience. Since I was 17 years old, I started a very beautiful journey to learn about life, to understand what life has meant and what it wanted to teach me. So I started to taking courses to understand life, to reconnect myself with life, to read books that could show me the way to connect with my heart, to connect with nature, to understand that I don't need any kind of recognition from anyone, that the only important recognition that I need is my own. So when I took one of these courses, I got this as a reminder of who I declared I was. And I like to think about it because just this is who I am. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a master in anything. I'm just a free, passionate, loyal, and totally in love with life man. This is who I am. Yeah.
This was amazing, Roberto. So beautiful.
Thanks so much.
To finish this off, would you like to give anyone watching a piece of advice? Something, a quick piece of advice?
Yeah, definitely. Always, always, always follow your heart. You might be afraid that it might take you to a wrong decision, but please make sure that even when it looks like a wrong decision, to follow your heart is what you should always do. It will prove in time that it was the right decision. Don't ever miss things because you're afraid, because you're ashamed. Just do whatever this tells you to do. Learn to listen to it. It will always show you the right way to go.